Hello historians, I am Jennifer Worman and this is my discussion video for the History 512 class for the analysis of Thomas Paine's Common Sense and the Declaration of Independence discussion, which highlights their shared credo that as America emerged a new nationality, it should therefore be constituted and recognized as a new nation. I will attempt to present the interpretations and impartial analysis of these ideologies that boldly coined America's independence. I acknowledge that according to course guidelines, historians must be honest and objective in their research, accepting it is God who has established order, intelligence, and truth, while recognizing the Bible and history teach all men to recognize their human limitations. Much scholarship has analyzed these famous works, foregrounding these shared theses, philosophies, resolutions, and ultimately call to arms. But where do they defend the identity of America as a new and independent nation? One could reason plainly the approaches of incontrovertible common sense for the economic defense, or military overreach, or Paine's disdain for the monarchical government in general, or be convinced merely through the emboldened rhetoric of the Declaration's accusatory cause against the king, or Paine's dialectic methodology that anticipated or disparaged England's rebuff. But a more philosophical study recognizes the existential, even biological responses that defend the cause for a new nationality. These are found in the identity of relation, injury, and the provisional shifts between the colonies and the mother country. Or was she? Was England the parental unit by 1775 when Paine was composing his pamphlet? Both documents would suggest otherwise, but with varying reasons. Paine highlights the king's relational shift from the, quote, pretended title of the father of his people to the Pharaoh of England as no longer kin, claiming his alliance was always interest, not attachment, end quote. Historian Worman asked, quote, was Great Britain a caring or unnatural and unfeminine mother to the colonies? Was King George an unnatural father, end quote? Peering past the expected Revolutionary War, Paine predetermines the king equally distanced as, quote, enemies in war, in peace, friends, end quote, but never again kindred. The Declaration also features the identity of America's relation to the king and England, but in contrast, identifies them through consanguinity or siblingship. This is interesting as it differentiates away from the parental bond or the hereditary tie of paterfamilias or primogeniture, and equalizes in station and generation, thus making it a more leveled attachment. This carries through to another nuanced reasoning that demands separate nationality, the injuries inflicted on the colonies that evoke an existential reaction, an emotional response, even a biological fleeing. Thomas Paine writes, quote, there are injuries which nature cannot forgive. She would cease to be nature if she did. This inextinguishable feeling for good and wise purposes, the guardians of his image in our hearts, that distinguish us from a herd of common animals, those injuries which our temper sustain provoke us into justice, end quote. Paine showcases a biological fight for survival, imprinted by God and demanded by our species. He and the Declaration share the sentiment that long-term abuse, as Edward Channing puts it, their desired, quote, to keep alive a keen sense of injury, end quote, has been prolonged, but they defer to use or as to the cause. Paine writes, quote, alas, we have been long led away by ancient prejudices and made large sacrifices to superstition, end quote. While the Declaration notes that, quote, according to all experience has shown, all mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed, end quote. Paine reasons injury as traditional, while the Declaration owes it to idle disposition. Either way, both documents give existential and survivalist rationale to defend America's self-sovereignty. And finally, a case can be made that the provisional shifts within the colonies deconstituted their suzerainty by England. Both charters agree there are sufficient members in American society to fulfill the needs of government, something historian Senator Beveridge said was naturally, quote, nature's method for the spread of civilization, end quote. Common Sense states, it is now the interest of America to provide for herself. She hath already a large and young family whom it is more her duty to take care of than to be granting away her property to support a power who's to become a reproach, end quote. Likewise, the Declaration asserts, quote, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security, end quote. Both express a need for government, but declare those needs able to be internally met within the American inhabitants. America, a nation by way of shifts in identity and relation and overexposure to injury, stands a nation that can provide for herself. Thank you and stay curious.